for all. Okay. All right. With that.
All right, Jen, we have to teach you the mute technique during that.
Oh, okay.
Because it's all about the cadence. We all get off on the cadence, and it's important to keep the cadence down.
Okay, so moving on to report from the first Selectwoman. I think I thought I'd just say a few things about Monday night. I just wanted to say, first of all, I want to thank everybody that came out Monday night to the town meeting. It was great to see so many people engaged in the process and participate in a healthy debate about important issues. This is why we have town meetings, to make sure the board is doing things in line with what the community wants. All of us on elected boards and the building committee and different volunteer boards in town are involved in this project, the school project. We're all residents and taxpayers, and most are volunteers. And we all work hard to make good decisions that serve the entire community needs. We love and are proud of Madison. And so with that, please keep that in mind as we move forward. We're trying to make the best decisions possible to serve the entire community. If anybody has any questions or concerns about the facts related to the appropriation that was discussed earlier, the school plan going forward, or statements made by others at the town meeting, please don't hesitate to reach out to my office at any time to get your questions answered. And then moving forward, this board will be working closely with the Board of Education and the new school building committee to determine the best path forward to ensure we can continue to deliver the new school along with the rest of the Madison School Renewal Plan as approved by the voters in 2022. And this discussion will start over the next few weeks. So with that, moving on, any selectmen comments or liaison reports?
I have several if you'd like me to go.
Go ahead.
All right, so I have three. I'll start with Madison Youth and Family Services. So I'm just going to read a quick update from the gang. Madison Youth and Family Services is happy to share our summer programs are up and running strong. They include a summer youth employment program that is funded by a state grant to reimburse the town for wages on the participants of whom we placed in participating job sites. We have 8 youth participants this year, and they've been placed in summer jobs with the following businesses: Jay Horton, What's Cooking, Timothy Pamet Salon, Madison Arts Barn, Scranton Library, Walker Loden, and First Congregational Church. This program benefits the youth with summer and work experience and the participating business with a part-time worker that is paid through the grant. We are so grateful to be able to partner with these wonderful businesses, many of whom have participated in past summers as well. We're also running our community services volunteer program. This program has trained a roster of 80 Madison youth who are eligible to sign up for volunteer activities as scheduled through the summer. Madison Youth and Family Services will schedule 70 different volunteer opportunities this summer, ranging from beach cleanups to car wash fundraisers to completing small home projects for Madison senior citizens during our single day big event. This week, the volunteers can be found volunteering between the Scranton Library and the Madison Senior Center, and many have pledged to help out with our puppy clinic fundraiser, the puppy picnic fundraiser. The puppy picnic has been rescheduled from this week to a date in August when residents can come and enjoy doggy-themed picnic with their favorite pooch while raising money for the Madison Youth and Family Services Back to School Fund. All this in addition to our year-round social services for Madison adults and families in need and youth mental health services that include summer social skills group offerings. For more information of any of these activities, residents can visit our website, Madison Youth and Family Services, and follow up on Facebook. So that was from our director, Scott Cochran. I also received an update from Craig Cook and Seth from the Madison Board of Education and Madison Public Schools, so our superintendent. So they have told us that major work occurring at Brown this summer. The back wing is being converted to a K through 1 classroom. The front office is being remodeled as well. We are on track to finish, but certainly a lot more has to happen before the end of August. Notable is the concrete has been poured on Monday for 6 tennis courts. 9 trucks continually brought in concrete for the entire day. We are appreciative of the town's support. And then a rooftop unit at Daniel Hand High School has again failed, leaving our music, band, and art rooms without AC and eventually heat, given the heat wave. We have short-term solutions in place, but this unit keeps failing. So obviously something that needs to be fixed. And then lastly, assessment scores received to date look very promising, anxiously awaiting state final release. And then last update, if I can, I'm doing my best here to navigate. I received something from our library. So the Scranton Memorial Library and their board of directors wanted to let you guys know that, and the public know, that circulation of physical items is up 43% from FY 21 to 22 fiscal year. In-person visitors are up 35% from 21-22, nearly 100,000 people for the year. Greater than 1,000 adult and children programs are offered during the 22-23 fiscal year. And then July 5th of note is a reception that was held, and there's a link. I can send a link to Jacqueline. Many thanks to benefactors Penny and Alan Katz for this particular fundraiser, which was on the 25th, which was last night. Mm-hmm. So that is it from end of report.
I don't know if you mentioned also the Polson, they're actually putting all new lockers into Polson as well.
Yeah, no, he did not mention that. So no, yeah, that's
so
great.
And that's one of the reasons the school is quite chaotic right now. I know that my daughter, who just left Polson, was very upset because the lockers were pretty stinky from what I was told. So they're the original lockers from the late 1960s. So I think kids are going to be very excited that get into Polson this year to find new lockers.
Absolutely.
Any other updates from board members or liaison reports?
No other updates from me. I just want to say I attended the art opening last night from Penny and Alan Katz, their donation. The library looks spectacular. Over 40 works of art they donated. Really great walking tour through the library to see all those. So I encourage folks to stop in and give a visit.
Donate.
There you go.
Great. Okay. Well, with that, if we could move on then, we added actually the approval of, can I get a motion to approve the minutes of July 19th, 2023 and July 24th, 2023?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion, amendments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oh, my pen doesn't show on this. All right. Motion passes unanimously. Moving on, Jacqueline, are there any citizens' comments?
Yes, Jack Dobson. I'm going to unmute him.
It's not Jack Dobson. It's Ellie Rourke.
Sorry, wrong person. There we go.
Minute.
Hello.
Yes, Jack. Hi, welcome.
Hi. I'd like to give a brief statement, if I could, about Monday night. If I can get like
just your
3-ish minutes.
name and address first for the record.
All right, awesome. I'm Jack Dobson of 318 Horse Pond Road, and I have a brief thing I'd like to say about Monday night. Is it all right if I get like 3-ish minutes?
Try to keep it to 2 if you can,
All right.
please. Just
I'll
because
keep it to
we've
2
got a lot,
also.
but thank you.
I'll read
you.
really fast. So I'm one of the people who voted yes on the resolution on Monday night. I'm disappointed that the bipartisan resolution did not pass, but I'm determined as someone who was a lifelong Madisonian and a graduate of the Mass public school system to state into the public record, not everyone agrees with the outcome of the vote of July 24th. I'm someone who hopes to have a family of my own, come back to Madison, or I'm in Madison right now. I'd like to stay in Madison. I just want to harken back to what happened in the early 2000s with Daniel Hand. I was only, I think, 4 when no, 6 when that new high school opened up. And, you know, when I grew up and I went through Daniel Hand, you could see the cost cutting and full display. There are times where we had to go to Polson to have assemblies at Polson because the cafeteria was in use, so we had to have cafeteria going on. And the lackluster fitness center is also kind of shows the cost cutting of the $10 million that went from the original 2000 vote to the 2001 vote. But today I'd say we're faced with a far more important issue at a lower cost, and that is the crucial development stage of development for elementary school students. I think that voting to add a few more classrooms so that we can reduce the student to teacher ratio is a great one at a far lower cost than what at hand this town was deciding on about 20 years ago now. I supported taking money from this undesignated fund balance because it would have meant $0 in new taxes and would have also covered the cost of inflation and these new classrooms, which I believe are worth it. As someone who wants to put this into a historical record, I hope that as a result of whatever happens from now on, I hope we can look back in 2043 and see that the Mass of today was one that learned its lessons from cutting corners on school projects. And it's far more important to invest in our facilities that will allow Mass Public Schools to live up to its motto of providing excellence in education. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. I didn't time it, so I'm assuming you're okay. Any other hands raised?
No other hands are raised.
Okay, great. All right, we will move on to item number 7 then, is to discuss the Polson project timeline and budget. And so we've got our advisors who are going to be joining us today from Colliers. And this is basically a follow-up to our kind of healthy discussion last time about the Polson project and whether or not geothermal was really an option that we could explore or not, given where we are with the budget. And also what it would do to the timeline with the project. So I asked Colliers to map out, you know, basically the 2 different scenarios. And then the complexity of this is you're also layering in a couple of things. One is you're layering in the generator project, which is going to be turning Polson into our new emergency shelter. So there's going to be work involved with that. And then there's going to be overlap between the electrical work done for the HVAC system as well as with the generator. So all these projects need to be coordinated, and we're trying to be as cost effective as possible. One of the good things that we're doing this now is we were forward thinking. And so we're going to hopefully save some money by doubling up on some of the changes that are going on with the electrical system at Polson. So I think it's helpful to kind of talk through this. I also want to just highlight the complexity of doing things in schools is most of the work has to be done during the summer. So, you know, any delay that misses that summer window delays it an entire year. The new school is being built on a field, but the redistricting that happens as the result of the new school is tied to the academic year. So, and so because you're shuffling kids and you're also moving kids to Brown, which is going through summer renovations, as Scott just highlighted. So this is very complicated, and it's also timing matters. So trying to keep to a timetable is very important, which is one of the motivations behind the appropriation approach to the new school when the board put that plan forward, trying to keep us on the same timeline and so that everything can get done appropriately, or else we miss a window and we are pushed out another year. So with that, I will then turn this over. We have Blair Richardson from Colliers, and then Bill McMinn has joined us, our facilities director, as well as Seth, who's chair of our Board of Education. So with that, I will turn it over to Blair.
So 2 things to kind of bear in mind with these projects. We've got multiple projects that can be phased as separate projects. We're going to get the most cost-effective design and construction if we combine as many of these as possible. So we have kind of a single mobilization, single design professional, and then ideally a single contractor that would facilitate all projects. And they can be phased as separate projects. The other thing we found is the cost increase this year on equipment was 8%, and we anticipate year over year escalation is going to be anywhere from 6 to 8% on equipment. I'm going to share my screen. So we did provide this as a PDF, but I think going through the Excel and being able to look at year over year kind of clarifies some of this. So we've got our 4 projects, and everybody can see my screen, correct? So we've got our 4 projects. We've got standby generator, electrical service upgrade, HVAC modernization, with geothermal being the first phase of the project if we elect to go geothermal. Baseball field replacement, which is already budgeted as a separate item. However, if we do pursue geothermal, it will require the baseball field to be replaced in sequence. And then the auditorium upgrades, bringing the auditorium and modernizing that infrastructure. Ideally, we're going to be moving forward with all these projects. We get approvals. Everything starts in lockstep. So we have January 1st, 2024, the design phase for both the generator and the HVAC modernization start at the same time. We have approximately 6 months of design for the standby generator and electrical service, and approximately 12 months for the overall HVAC modernization. And those would be, again, lockstep. In a perfect world, one design consultant. So we go through the 6-month design schedule for the standby generator and electrical service upgrade. We have an estimated 12 months of procurement. That's just the lead time on equipment. So that would push the electrical equipment out till about July or August. So that would be when we would expect to get the equipment. Clearly, we can't take the electrical service offline in August. So that would push the generator project to the following year, 2026, for construction. You know, jumping down, again, everything's kind of in a parallel track. Looking at the design phase for HVAC modernization, 12 months would bring us to January of 2025, when the project would go out to bid. We expect about a 4-month lead time on equipment. And this is pretty typical throughout the remainder of the project, but geothermal would be the first phase. Again, if we elect to go with geothermal, this is drilling the wells. This is doing the site work to get that infrastructure in place initially. And as you can see, the baseball field, right on the heels of that, we're going to need to basically dig up the baseball field, put our geothermal well system in there. And as soon as that is completed, in August, September, October, November, we're going to be rebuilding the baseball field. This, again, baseball field is already an anticipated project at Polson. We would just be phasing the baseball field parallel with the geothermal installation. So we're going to dig up the baseball field for the geothermal wells, and then we're going to rebuild the baseball field immediately after, so that baseball can take place in 2026. The total cost for 2024 to 2025 is anticipated to be $5,660,000. And then the projects anticipated are described here below. Shifting to the following 2 years, we go from 2026 to 2027. The electrical service upgrade, the actual construction phase, would take place between April and October, with power outages happening between June, when school gets out, and August, prior to school going back into session. So this is where we would have electrical transition between the old system being demolished and the new system being installed and energized. Again, so it would not impact the educational year, the academic year. Parallel to that, we'd be procuring equipment for HVAC modernization, and we would do our first phase of installation of HVAC equipment. Now down here at the bottom, we see the auditorium upgrades. So we would target the first year of HVAC improvements to include the auditorium. And that would enable us to start design and the following year do construction on the auditorium upgrade project. The alternative will show at the end if we were to do the auditorium as the last phase of the project. And we'll see kind of year over year, the HVAC modernization is anticipated to be 5 or 6 months of procurement, June, July, August construction, and they'll turn the building back over to the educators just prior to the academic year starting. The anticipated cost in 2026 to 2027, if the auditorium upgrade is included, is approximately $11,980,000. And that includes, again, an estimated 8% escalation year over year, which is conservative, but clearly we've seen some crazy times. That can be, we could dial that back to 6%, but 8% is what we use year over year. So 2028 into 2029, again, HVAC procurement, construction over the summer. 2029, this would be the other option for the auditorium upgrade project, which would be 2029 into 2030. And that would shift the whole project, all the costs, approximately 3.7 million into 2029 and 2030. This includes 8% escalation year over year. So we had 2.9 million budgeted for the auditorium upgrades. If we wait till 2030 to do that, the expected cost would be about 3.7 million in 2030. That's the anticipated phasing at this point. The only portion that could shift would be the auditorium project. If geothermal was eliminated, it would condense the entire project schedule approximately 1 year. Questions?
I guess I have one. Can you scroll back to like early years? So I'm not an engineer, full disclosure, right? So I have no idea what I'm talking about. I may say something that I regret, but at the end of the day, you know, as members of the public, and they would see, you know, 12 months of a design phase for an HVAC modernization, for example, or 6 months for a design phase of a generator. Can you just explain why it takes that long? Like what's
Absolutely.
because I think most people have no clue, nor do I, by the way.
Looking at the generator specifically, the scope included here is going to be identifying all of the existing electrical infrastructure, understanding what's connected to it, doing calculations to determine what the existing system requirements are, and then creating a new piece of switchgear, something that's custom designed to accommodate all of the existing loads. In addition, there's survey work because we're going to be adding generator to the site. We need a fuel tank to provide fuel to the generator. We're replacing the utility service entrance. So there's a lot of coordination with the utility that extends beyond just the building. It goes into the local power grid to identify how much electricity we're going to be drawing, what type of demand there's going to be. So it's not 40 hours a week for 25 people doing this. This is the schedule. Utility might take a month to respond to a load letter. So it looks like there's a long time that's
less FTEs. I'm with you. I got it. That makes sense. Yeah.
And then the HVAC modernization, pretty much the same idea, where we're going to be phasing the project over multiple years. There's a lot more coordination for the design phase here to make sure that we can turn over each component, each phase of the project in one summer. So that is essentially its own individual design package that has to get created. If we were to design that and the construction takes 4 months, then we have to push into the school schedule. The expectations, there's no swing space. We need to be able to turn over the educational areas at the beginning of school. Like, no ifs, ands, or buts. It has to be completed in that 2.5, 3 month window.
That's helpful. Appreciate that.
A question, because I know we're living through a little bit the town campus HVAC project, right? Which has taken a long time in terms of designing and then bidding. And then we're going to be under construction starting this fall. And it's going to involve some offices having to move. And that's just with people's offices, right? Is there any way this could be done during the school year? Where you can, have temporary spaces set up for certain classrooms, or I know it's not optimal. I'm just asking, have you seen other schools do something like that? Because this is obviously a very surprising, lengthy timeline. I think trying to get this done sooner rather than later is always, a positive thing. And then secondly, the procurement piece, is this supply chain related? Why these phases take so long? I mean, I know the electrical has been a problem for some electrical components, but, just talk us through kind of what is being experienced with the procurement piece.
Absolutely. So looking at generators and transformers specifically, those have an extremely long lead time. And one is that the demand is huge. Everybody is electrifying. Everybody's buying generators. Everybody's replacing transformers because you're essentially doing the same thing. They're adding air conditioning to buildings that didn't have it before. And that almost always requires an electrical service upgrade. So it's like your house, you've got 100 amp service. You want to upgrade that to a 200 amp service. It takes coordination. You need the utility to be involved. And every school system across the country is experiencing similar projects. The utility is replacing transformers on a regular basis. So the demand is a lot higher. Everybody's buying those right now. So it's a competitive market. Coming out of the pandemic, I think the industry's realized that people had to get cut back to a 40-hour work week or a 45-hour work week, and people just don't want to work 60 or 80 hours when the backlog is there, and companies aren't pushing them. So we're finding that instead of having people work 80 hours a week to get more products created, they're just pushing the lead time out. And we're the victims of that. But again, for the electrical infrastructure specifically, that's what we're dealing with. For the HVAC, we see anything, the lead times are pretty much back to where they were pre-pandemic. Releasing an order in January, you might get it in 8 to 12 weeks. But there's some buffer in here so that we want to have the equipment in March, so that there's like a 2-month window if lead time slips for whatever reason. There's a 2-month window. HVAC equipment procurement wise, this is an exaggeration or an inflated expectation for how long it's going to take to actually get the equipment and the parts and pieces. The construction schedule is really the critical path.
You guys have to plan for worst case scenario anyways, right? I mean, that's kind of the point.
Yeah. And manufacturers, they give you 18 months from the ship date or 12 months from like substantial completion when the equipment's energized. So from a warranty perspective, this works. We've got, just over 6 months of like warranty window for the equipment to be installed and started before your actual 12-month warranty would start. looking at going back to the point about potential swing space, I did quite a bit of work for the city of Stamford, and Stamford High School was renovated. There was a lot of abatement work related to that project. So the separation of the areas of work and where the students were was at a much higher level. They had all the air barriers, all the hazmat, the negative air machines and stuff like that. We're not anywhere close to that level of separation between the construction and the students. If we were to find swing space, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't be able to, stretch this work out potentially year round. The impact to the students would be construction noise. We would have people on site that are not educators. So there's the concern about having people in the building doing construction potentially during school hours. So we could look at phasing that during the school year, doing some work during the school year if there's swing space. That's definitely feasible.
Can you just we had an interesting conversation on Monday at our town meeting, just related to the supply chain and nuances of, economic uplift. Can you just talk a little bit about your escalation there that you're using of 8%, and what's real, what's not real? What do you think it's going to land at relative to the escalation? I know we got to, again, plan for worst case scenario. I get it. But, a lot of people use the number 3%. I know in years past, Billy was using sort of 3%. I'm sure Billy's nodding his head. I just can't see him, but 3% on all the costs that we laid out. But when we got in post-COVID, things were dramatically different, and we had to start using different numbers. So can you just comment on that for us?
Yeah, 8% again this is very high. This is what we saw this year. All of the equipment manufacturers added 8%. That this was their pricing.
So real numbers.
So 8% was this year. August 1st is when all of the price increases go into effect, and across the board it was about 8%.
Wow.
I think average year over year for the construction industry, we're looking at something more like 4 to 6% would be more realistic. 8% gives us a buffer. If this schedule, if these costs are palatable, we're going to be well below this 8% overall. Again, worst case scenario, 8% is what the equipment was in August. I think, Chuck is messaging me right now. We're seeing 5 to 6% is what we're seeing as an average.
Okay, that's helpful.
Blair, can you just talk a little bit about why the design phases are so staggered out over time? If you scroll back to the earlier years, why not have the design work happen on all the projects right away?
You mean simultaneously, Bruce? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And effectively what it does is it starts to pull in all of the bid and the procurement timelines because they're sequential. They're not parallel.
So the challenge with that, and I completely understand where you're coming from. The generator and the HVAC are very closely related. They're going to impact each other. So we want to know what the new HVAC loads would be so that the standby generator electrical service upgrade can accommodate those. When we get down here to the auditorium, this is independent enough that the expectation is the auditorium will be a separate bid package, separate contractors. The auditorium work is going to be more specialized. It's going to be more lighting. So the scope for the auditorium is distant enough from the HVAC and electrical that it makes the most sense to put this out for professional services and construction procurement as a totally separate package. But
but why not a totally separate package now? Or in 2024 or in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. So we could basically take this and, you know, drag it back here.
Now, you may
The,
not be able to, you may not be able to drag all of your execution stages in that far, but the design is going to be the design, right?
yeah, I mean,
Unless
the report,
unless you're dealing with unknown escalations that you can't predict when you actually have to do the
Well, but
build.
the design is not the bid, right? So I get
Well,
holding.
yeah, but I think though, the HVAC is infrastructure in the auditorium. So,
There's disruption in there already.
so I'm just saying, like, my understanding is the HVAC line down there that includes the auditorium upgrade, the auditorium HVAC, right? And then the auditorium upgrades, that's just dealing with lighting and seating. So do you want to go in and like paint and put new lighting in, and then all of a sudden, a year later, they come in and rip up the ceiling to put in new ductwork? Is that,
No, no,
is
no.
that, does that
Design,
happen?
design is mapping out the project and scoping out the project. I understand not actually building or
Yeah.
buying. But it
Oh,
then
you're just talking about the
allows you-
design piece itself, not moving the whole project forward.
Right,
Yeah.
although it may afford the opportunity to move some of the execution stages in, right? If the
But
design
once
work
HVAC
is done
in,
in
right, yeah.
is done in 2024, presumably once the HVAC is done or at a certain stage, the auditorium work could then begin immediately around it rather than have it offset by a year.
yeah, Bruce, 100% to your point. The expectation here is that the auditorium HVAC, whatever components related to our HVAC modernization, that would get captured in 2026, and then the next year we would do all the auditorium work. So it would get staggered. We do the HVAC, whatever would potentially impact the auditorium project, and then the following year we would do the auditorium. Again, if the geothermal were to come out of the project, the entire project schedule would get condensed one full year.
So the HVAC has to be done before the other auditorium work is done or is even started?
Correct. And the reason we would, and hypothetically to your point, again, going back to the design, the HVAC design, once that's completed, that's going to have the new ductwork for the auditorium included. And there's going to be impacts to lighting in the auditorium. So we would want to understand what the structural infrastructure impact is going to be to the theatrical lighting system. So when we put in the new theatrical lighting, the HVAC modernization won't interfere with that layout. So this would be phased, but maybe it would, maybe it would have to happen like somewhere out here. Once they know what the impact is going to be, then you could really start the architectural design, the lighting design for the auditorium.
Couldn't you take, like, I'm just looking at just this, the view you're showing right here. There's a 5-month gap between execution of I think that's the execution of the generator and the HVAC. It looks like there's a 5-month gap, unless that's not execution. Maybe that's procurement phase. I don't know what that means. So
this gap right here.
yeah. Is there a way to consolidate? I guess I'm just looking at the overall timeline, saying 2030, and going,
Yeah.
There's got to be a way to do this quicker.
The problem with the electrical is that it has to de-energize the building for a month. So there's going to be no electricity, no HVAC for about a month. And we have to try to schedule that over the summer break based on the procurement.
That makes sense. Yeah, I get that. Yep.
So, and ideally, we've got a 12-month lead time on equipment. And quite frankly, that might be generous. I was on a call Monday, and another client was facing issues with lead time on generators, and they were looking at 24 months for a generator. I don't think we're in that category, but we've got 12 months, and then we've got realistically 8-10 month buffer in there should the procurement go over.
And I apologize because this is the first time I'm seeing this as well, and it's a lot to absorb. And I think we're gonna have to have further conversations about this, but I guess a couple things. The generator, you can do the electrical work and wait for the generator, right? And I'm trying to understand, does this allow for that? Because you can still put your order in for the generator. The generator is a piece of equipment, right? But the electrical work is all the infrastructure that needs to be there to receive the generator, right?
This
So I
is
feel like that
all-
procurement shouldn't drive the rest of the project, because maybe we never add a generator for some reason. I'm not saying we are going to do that, but you can design the system for the generator, but you don't wait for the generator, right?
Right. So this lead time includes the generator, the switch gear, and then the utility coordination. So we're 12 months. Everything is expected to be 12 months. All of the electrical equipment is
All
12
of the
months.
electrical equipment.
Everything.
So, okay. So and when you talk about switch gear, that impacts the electrical for the HVAC system.
Correct. So ideally,
So there's other things there besides the generator that are delaying this, that are backlogged, which I think we've seen that. We know downtown center project, we've encountered some of this.
yeah, and realistically, with the parallel schedule between the HVAC modernization and the electrical upgrades and the standby generator, as this design progresses, the electrical engineer is going to be coordinating with the mechanical engineer. So we're going to understand, by the time June rolls around, we've got 5 months of design. Both of these engineers are going to be 100% coordinated. The HVAC is going to take a little bit longer for phasing, but electrically we'll be able to release that package just to start eating into this lead time.
And if you had this all starting January of 2024, I mean, if we said start the design phase, if we said we want to go with conventional HVAC, and you started the design phase, this is actually when you've hired it. So this doesn't include the RFP that we would need to launch to hire somebody to do the design, right? That process would actually have to start now, right?
Correct.
Is this assuming we've hired somebody and they're starting work?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the expectation. We do have the RFP that we created for the HVAC modernization. That included the phase 2 scope, which is the design and then the construction administration. But this RFP for the HVAC modernization is essentially already created. The feasibility report, which was a deliverable from the phase 1, it made your recommendations for a conventional system and recommendations for a geothermal option. Whichever one we decide to pursue, additional funding would be required for the geothermal, or additional expenditure to the project would be required for the geothermal. But a conventional system would condense this, not only construction by 1 year, but it would also streamline the design, because we're not worried about the geothermal and then all of the additional distribution associated with that.
Another question is, we were talking about the auditorium and moving up the design, which I kind of agree, like we should be doing that as soon as we can. But the auditorium in theory could be done during the school year, right? So that could be done, I would think, more quickly. Except for obviously if you have to shut things down for a month, that has to happen during the summer. But if you're talking about even HVAC, if you stage out, if you could stage out the auditorium HVAC piece with the renovations of that could move this whole project up, I would think, a lot more. Because to be honest, I think everybody's stunned that this goes out as far as it does. And I know this was your first attempt to map all this. It's complicated, but I think just it's very surprising.
Hey, can I just jump in for a sec? So maybe and I don't mean to put you on the spot, Billy, but maybe you and the building committee, like, what is your reaction to the schedule here? And is this, what you guys were expecting from a building standpoint? Is this, on a reasonable timeline? I think, again, I react similar to what Peggy just said, which is it just seems long, but maybe this is what you guys expected.
It's what I expected. It's a little longer than I had hoped. We're farther behind than I was hoping. I thought we would already have committed to a design. We haven't even agreed on geothermal or not. It's just because we have so many other projects going on and so much going on that we haven't even, agreed on what we're doing. So it's probably a year behind I'd like to be. I was hoping that we would already have a design and be ordering stuff this summer. So I think we're 1 year behind what I was hoping.
I think the other thing is that, and this is what is the next item on our agenda, is moving forward, there is no committee for this project, and it's very complicated and multifaceted. And so we wanted to talk about how to get a group, because right now it's really Bill and working, with the school facilities committee at times, but and Collier's obviously has been a big help. So I think we need to get like an organization, a structure in place to keep this moving along and be more paying, attention to the different components that go into this. Normally you're replacing HVAC. It's not something you have a committee for, but because of the complexity of this, particularly with the generator, I think it just is better to have more ongoing working group to oversee it.
Listen,
So
I was
before
on
we get into that
I was on the
discussion, I
facilities
thought,
committee that drove the decision. I mean, we had a working committee that drove the recommendation to go do the emergency shelter too. So, I mean, I get it. I mean, you're right. You're right.
So I think just to wrap up, obviously there's ways we can kind of shorten the timeline, it sounds like, and it's juggling a number of things, but there's a critical decision factor that has to be made. And that is, the whether or not we want to move forward on the geothermal. And, he hasn't talked about the budget, as we showed in our previous meeting, that we don't have the funding to really move forward with the geothermal anyway. We would have to figure that out as well. And my preference is that we we just move forward with the conventional system, and then we can go out and do the RFP to get the system design, and we can at least be on this timeline now to start as soon as possible.
Blair, I have one more question. I'd like to get back to escalation for a minute. You indicated going forward, I think that you were using a number like 8%.
Correct.
I happen to sit on the Academy Building Committee, which is also provided support by your organization, Blair. And last night we had a discussion about the last 2 years of escalation, not going forward, but what happened over the last 2 years. And one of your colleagues presented us with a study from the Cumming organization, which showed that over the last 2 years, escalation may well have been in the 11 to 13% range. And so that helps to explain some of the surprises we're experiencing now. So the last 2 years were perhaps at a higher rate, and going forward, it's still at a high rate, but somewhat lower. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. And Chuck was, like I said, he had messaged me. The expectation is that annual escalation is going to be between 5 and 6%. And we can revise this to bring the escalation down to that 5% or 6%. 8% is high. 8% is absolutely high. But we just August, we've got an 8% increase across the board from multiple manufacturers. I'd say the one caveat, we're also seeing price decreases on some equipment because the supply chain is finally caught up. There's additional manufacturing domestic for pieces of equipment. So across the construction industry, the spectrum, we got some equipment that's going up in price, but then we've got some equipment that's going down in price. So again, that 5-6% across the board is more realistic.
So the
Well,
last 2 years have really been frightening, Blair. Is that it?
Yeah, I don't think
Yeah.
anybody has, at this point, we can't predict where the market is going to be. In the past 2-3 years, we've tried to predict where it's going to be. And due to supply chain issues, like raw material costs going up, wars globally, totally unpredictable. So while we want to predict, we've kind of proven to ourselves over the past 3 years that if you get it right, you should buy a lottery ticket.
Right. So I think all this talk about cost escalation, inflation, gets right to the heart of geothermal and the bigger, efforts that we've got going on in town around solar. These are, in effect, all hedges against inflation in the future. Energy prices aren't going to come down. Electricity isn't going to come down. And if we miss this opportunity to invest in the property for future savings, my concern is we'll never do it. Because, listen, how many hundreds of thousands of dollars we're going to spend on a new baseball field? Once that field is down, we're never digging it up to put wells in underneath it. The time is really now, and our long-term best hedge against inflation, I think, is to do those things, those infrastructure features in the building that will hedge against future cost increases.
I agree with you, Bruce, completely. But the flip side of that argument is it was never in scope. And introducing it now, let's go back to the town meeting on Monday, right? Introducing it now introduces additional costs that were unplanned. And so that's more money to the taxpayers. I'm just not sure. I'm not sure we have the capacity and the budget, frankly, to increase additional costs at this point. I just don't see that as realistic right now. I think it's the right answer. I just don't think we have the capacity to do it.
Well,
So if we did have the excess cash to apply to it, Scott, you think you would support it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I know it's the right thing long term, but the hard part right now is it was never budgeted for. So the taxpayers aren't expecting it.
But I would like to get back to this, whether or not we would actually, there's the greater good, right? Less pollution, and that clearly you can't put a dollar on, being better for the environment, right? But the economic piece of this, Blair, when we had originally gone through the cost estimates, last month before we made the presentation to the Board of Selectmen, there's this whole concept of payback, right? You're going to save money in the long run because you're going to be more efficient, and you seem to think that wasn't the case here because of the age of the building. And then you talked about this relies on electricity, to run a geothermal system, correct? So that's where I'm just trying to understand, this isn't like, oh, we're going to make it back and more. We've seen the library, we have seen huge savings, right? Why is that not the case here? Because that was something you commented on, but I don't think the board had that. I think that was in the meeting that we had together. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. So with the geothermal system, this is a public school, so the building loads, the ventilation rates are very different than what we would expect for a public library. Going 100% geothermal, all electric, is going to cost more money in your annual utility bills. So we go to 100% electric, we're buying from the utility, the cost is going to be higher than what we have now because the price of natural gas per unit of energy is so much lower than electric. Even with the geothermal heat pump efficiency, we still anticipate the cost will be a little bit higher going with geothermal. Now, if we're putting solar panels on the roof and talking about escalation, the price of solar panels has actually come down considerably. And if we were to put solar panels on the roof, put solar carports, maximize the amount of solar PV, our electrical costs per unit of energy would go down considerably, and that would provide savings. In
So
addition,
more than
to-
what we currently have, because I know like, okay, the new school is gonna have geothermal, right? It's also gonna have solar, I'm assuming. So, because we're making this investment in the new school, we're also anticipating getting a lot of rebates back to help pay for that system. For this, we have solar carports at Polson. We have solar panels on. Do we have them on Polson? We don't have them on the roof of Polson, do we?
At Polson, we have the
Herschel.
standalone carports, and we do have it on the new gym, new gym that was, very old. But so yes, we do have on some of the roof at Polson, just on the gymnasium. One
So
of
it
the
would
gyms.
have to be more than that, or have we actually looked at this? Okay, so you're looking at what the new electrical load would be, what our
Correct.
current usages, all that stuff. Okay.
yeah, and Collier's just completed Mansfield Elementary School or Mansfield Middle School was the first true net zero building, and they did geothermal and solar PV, and they were able to make as much electricity as they were consuming in energy. And the geothermal, every square inch of that roof was covered in solar panels. There were solar carports, and again, the geothermal paired with the solar, a net zero building. So they're not paying anything for electricity. They're not consuming any electricity. Amazing, but I don't see that being applicable to this project. But that would be the example we would want to parallel or we want to mirror. I think Seth, you have.
Yeah, Seth, I'm sorry. I know you just jump in.
Sorry.
So this isn't the Board of
All right.
Finance, which has
Yeah.
fines people if they speak out of turn. So
Thank you.
Point of order, we can't have Seth talk, sorry.
we do have a time limit, Seth, though.
Yeah, I'll try and do it quickly. I'm a proponent of geothermal in the general sense, and I'm totally behind it for the new school because the new school is going to have a horizon that will more than plus with the rebates from the federal government. Between those two things, that horizon will allow us to recoup according to the hedge that Bruce is talking about.
Can you explain that, what you mean by horizon?
We're going to have
Life
that
of
school
the life of the building.
yeah, we're going to have that school for at least 30, 40, 50 years rather than, I mean, Polson, even rebuilt, it's still on an older skeleton. And I would guess we may only get another 20, 30 years out of it. So it's not the same horizon to recoup that money from the efficiency. So secondly, when you were talking earlier about wanting to bring in the length of these projects that are looking like they're staggered out to 2030 right now. Well, a lot of that is taken care of and you can front load it more if you don't do the geothermal, because you'll get a quicker study on the traditional HVAC, right? Traditional HVAC is also more efficient now than it used to be. So we will get some savings there. And then you don't have to dig up the baseball field and put wells in, right? You can do that later through CIP, like we were going to, and it's a less expensive project because you don't have to replace all the soil and foundation. You're just tearing up the turf and putting down new turf. And then it also eliminates that project that was slid out on the calendar more. And then it also eliminates, it means you can pull in the auditorium rebuild quicker, because by going with the traditional HVAC, not only can you design it sooner, but you can start building it in the summer of 26. Now, I would not advocate planning to build the auditorium, in the middle of a school year, because even though the auditorium is somewhat severable from the rest of the school, the fact is you're going to be bringing a lot of adults onto the campus during the school day when students ought to be concentrating on their work. And also, for security purposes these days, you don't want to have that mix. At best, I would say maybe you start it as soon as school is out and maybe go into September with cordoning off that portion of the school. And then you're minimizing, the adult presence, outside adult presence on the property. So that's all I
Well,
want to say. on that
well,
stuff.
Can I suggest,
Yeah.
just given time here, guys, can we table this
Mhm.
piece of the conversation? Because I feel like it's a bit of a duplicative conversation too. We've had this conversation 2 or 3 previous selectmen meetings on whether or not we go down the path of geothermal. I thought we were aligned at least the going in position, but maybe we need to have a separate, think about it and a conversation about it. But it feels like we're going a bit down a rabbit hole here.
I think that we need to make a decision in August, because I think otherwise we're going to this is going to keep sliding. And so I'd love to have a decision in August about what direction we're going with, so they can go out and start hiring somebody to design the system, because time is money. Whether it's 3% inflation, 10% inflation, whatever, the more we push this out every year, the more the cost is going to rise, and it's going to create a problem with the budget. If we're going to go with geothermal, then we have to know how we're going to pay for it. And so that has to be a conversation. And I just don't think that there's appetite right now to be using other funding to ensure that this moves forward. We don't have the money in the budget for it, period. We might get it back later with rebates and all this other stuff, but unless we can find some way to account for this, we could delay it, until we get the design back. Everything's going to be speculative. And I think that was something that was frustrating for the public. We are guessing, but that's all we can do until we get bids, right? So we can design this whole system and still come back either hopefully presently surprised and save some money, or we might have to have another budget discussion. So we just have to go with the information that we have today and make decisions based on the estimates that the experts are giving us. So I think I would like to say we'll table it for now, but then come back with a decision in August so we can give our team the marching orders going forward. And then, this next piece, because I don't really know what our action item is, to be honest. We know usually but I guess we technically award the contract, right, to design the system. So that's endorsing whatever system we're telling people to design, right? So I guess that's our authority here as a Board of Selectmen.
Right. So I think to get to that decision, it would be really helpful if we could get some sort of brief from Billy or from somebody that Billy designates on why it was the right thing to do at town campus, the new school, academy, library, and why it's the wrong thing to do at Polson.
Well,
I think that
I
would
don't
help.
think it's necessarily that we wouldn't want to do it. It's just there's so many other mitigating factors that are going to now us that we can't do it. That's it's money.
Factors, cost,
So,
and priorities. It's a variety of things. It's not as simple, I think, as just in isolation the school.
Well, I mean, that's kind of, my moving forward strategy. I think that it's difficult for us to say green energy, solar, geothermal, energy efficiency, climate facing initiatives from the town are a priority until we say they're not a priority. And we said, well, we're just not going to do it.
Hang on, Bruce, though, because I've gotten that pushback from you a lot about electric vehicles. They cost more money.
No.
Yeah,
not about
and you've been
vehicles.
like, well, I want to see the economics on this, and then I want to see why are we
no.
spending more money for an electric vehicle when we can get a gas one cheaper?
I've never
right?
said that. I have consistently said I did not want the town to be in the public business of refueling electric cars with taxpayer subsidized charging stations. Electric vehicles are definitely the way of the future. And how they find their way into the municipal fleet, I think will just be a function of technology and availability. I mean,
Well, I think that
can we move on? That's not even relevant to the conversation.
Well, and I think that this is to be continued, and I think it's fair to come back more with some of the questions that Bruce is asking, but then we just have to make a decision in August. Okay,
We do have the feasibility report provided by BL companies that it looks at the 3 different options, conventional
Awesome.
1, conventional
Yeah,
2,
perfect.
and geo. We should have a focus review of that report to talk about.
Maybe you guys do that in the context of your Board of Ed Facilities Committee and come back with a recommendation to us as the Board of Selectmen of what we think is the right answer.
well,
And
and then I
just
think that
lastly,
we as a board, or maybe those who are advocating for geothermal, can please provide us with a funding path.
well, and the other thing that I would say is, I think the town and the Board of Ed and all the planners and the leaders are being responsible, very responsible, in the sense that we're pulling back from a 7-building model to a 4-building model, if you include TCLC, and by diminishing our footprint that much, and pulling in on, $1 million per each, Jeffrey and Ryerson, if you average them, one's a little bit less, one's a little bit more than $1 million a year in operating costs and energy. I think we are doing a responsible thing, and let's not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. I would love to see geothermal there if I had my druthers, but it just doesn't seem like it's in the cards for a retrofit to an older building. That's it. Thanks.
Okay, so we'll plan on August. We'll get questions that people have, and then we'll just have to make a decision then. And then I think Blair may be thinking through the timeline a little bit more, doing whatever you can to the timeline to try to pull it forward a little bit. I think that would be helpful, because I think it's a little concerning, obviously, for everybody, because be nice to have a town meeting in an air-conditioned auditorium, right? So
That was rough. That was rough.
yes. Okay, well,
then
with that,
on
is it
number-
okay? We'll move on to really item 8, and this is just where I think we've realized we really do need some coordination, some sort of working group to oversee this project. And so my thought was creating kind of similar to what we did with the emergency shelter, Scott, have a group that would include a member of the Board of Selectmen, a member of the Board of Education, likely the Facilities Committee chair, because they have a Facilities Committee. The school principal, I chatted with the superintendent about that. He thought it would be important to have the school principal there. And then we would also want our facilities director, obviously, and the emergency management director, because of the generator project. So this would be to make sure everybody's thinking and understanding, when you make a decision on HVAC, you're also impacting X, Y, and Z, right? And so they kind of would oversee this as a working group going forward. So that was kind of, and I had a brief conversation with the school superintendent, and Seth, I think you were part of that conversation too, right? And Bill, would this be a good a good group of people to shepherd this through? And so I just wanted to share that with you and see if anybody had any. This wouldn't be like a formal committee of the Board of Selectmen. It's more of a loose working group. They're not going to be making decisions. They're going to be more guiding and making recommendations, similar to like what we did with the shelter.
Yeah, because the Facilities Committee for the Board of Ed actually is the legally entitled or authorized organization to oversee it at present. But we certainly would absolutely find support in having an organized group that is kind of a working group on that gives us broader perspective.
Yeah, I'm for it. I mean, I
Is
thought it worked
everybody good
really
with
well,
that?
and I nominate Billy as the chair.
Yeah, I think as long as it's helping Billy and not creating more work for him,
Exactly.
then that's fine. And so, Bill, you speak up and say who you want to see involved in the conversations.
Peggy and I've talked. I think it's a good plan. I think there's some hard decisions to make. I think you guys have been, struggling with them. If we do the geo, even if it's a wash and we get all the money back with the grants and the federal and the rebate programs, you're still going to have to increase the budget to cover those additional costs. That to me is the big rub. Do we have the palate to do that? I think we all agree that's the right thing to do, but I think we all have differences of opinion, maybe we all agree. that going back to the town and asking for the additional funds, even if it's gonna be a rebate program and covered in other places, we still have to expend the money first.
Yeah,
I think that's
gonna be,
really the problem.
that's gonna be the toughest piece of the puzzle, because based on what we heard from the community on Monday night, you know, in their opinion, the budget's the budget, and appropriations are, they're not gonna fly.
And that's exactly what happened for the high school. And I know because I've been doing it a long time, and we've been looking at this project and the new school. We said, oh, we're not going to do that. We're going to ask for additional funds to make those changes so we don't shortchange the project. And I was here when the high school went in. The townspeople said, no, that's how much money you have to do a new high school. Get it done. And the building committee, I thought, did a great job, but they had to cut costs on some of the scope. And you see what happened. So there's not one right or wrong answer. And I'm respectful for everybody that has opinions about funding. And I'm happy to go along. I think a committee, when we're trying to decide things and we don't have clear direction and we're trying to have a consensus on what the best plan is, absolutely. You know, Board of Selectmen, Board of Ed, the principal, you know, so we make sure that we understand all her needs. Sam, who's going to be in charge of the emergency management, who's going to be part of this building too, all positive things. It just stretches it out a little longer, but I know that those are all people we can work with. And with Blair's help, I can pull it, you know, I can push the things to make decisions and make recommendations. The Board of Selectmen ultimately has to make the final decision, but we can absolutely give you more data and more information if you're looking for it.
Okay, great. So we will, we'll kind of convene that working group going forward, and then we will, have a, you know, another discussion in August and hopefully a decision at that point. Okay? Okay. Well, thank you, Blair, and to be continued. Okay?
Thank you all.
All right, thanks. All right, so with that, we'll move on. I know we've already gotten into this quite late. So update, it just means you guys can vote very quickly on a lot of the other things tonight, right? So now I'd like to give you an update on a really, you know, positive note. The proposed, although this is all positive, we're excited about these projects on the Garvin Point Improvement Project. So we have a proposed design plan. So I want to invite up the advisors that we have from SLR, as well as I think John Anako might be on, as well as Austin, you know, to talk about kind of where we are in this project and the timeline for this as well. And I think this was, I know people are very sensitive about, we love Garvin Point. It's a community asset. And so we want to make sure the public has an opportunity to see what the direction of the design and make sure that it meets the needs of the public. So that's why we want to get ahead of this and get, you know, feedback from the board about do we like what we see today? So that I will turn it over to SLR. And is Sam, are you going to be doing the presentation?
So it should also be Kishore Patel and then also Michael Doherty as well.
Okay,
It'll be
so
all three
there's
of
two
us.
others.
All right, give me 1 second.
Okay, yeah. Okay, welcome.
Thank you. I think we're all on.
Okay, great.
Yep.
If you want to go ahead and kick it off, and we're running pretty slow here, so keep it a good pace.
We'll
But you've got
try
good
to.
pictures, so that's great. This will be more fun than looking at line charts. So,
All right. Sam, do you want to bring up the presentation?
Let's see. Screen. Can you see that all right?
Yes.
Yep.
Mike, you want to start it off?
Sure. Well, thank you everyone for having us here this evening. And yeah, we will try to keep this as brief as possible, but we do want to have hopefully a healthy discussion on Garvin Point, which I'm sure everybody is very familiar with. Sam, if you want to go to the next slide. So my name is Mike Doherty. I'm a principal landscape architect with SLR, and I'm going to be the first MC to kind of kick things off here. And then I'm going to turn it over to Sam and Keyshore. So overall, we just want to do a real quick overview of the site, some of the goals and objectives, and then dive right into the concepts and touch on the structural aspects of the project, and then permitting, which is a big time driver. So then we'll finish up with the timeline of the project and then hopefully answer any questions you may have. So real quick, if you're not familiar with our firm, SLR Consulting, we were formerly known as Milone McBroom for 35 plus years. We are a multidisciplinary firm, which I think really plays to the strengths of a project like this, where we could pull in talented expertise, from Keyshore as a structural engineer, and myself and Sam, our landscape architects. We also have Megan Raymond on the team, who's a principal scientist who'll be running all the permitting, and Nirdash Patel, who's also a structural engineer helping out Keyshore. Behind the scenes, we have civil engineers as well, surveyors who have performed the survey for the project, and geotechnical engineers who are providing support in terms of the ground information, soil information. So if you're not familiar with Garvin Point, which I'm sure you all are, here is an aerial photograph, and what you can't really see over this is a survey that was done by our firm for the project. And what we basically did was about 10 feet out from the bulkhead wall into Long Island Sound, we took topographic information and ground survey all the way back to the accessible parking spaces just north of the restroom building. So, and then we went east-west onto the beaches, for 150 feet or so, and onto the boat launch side as well. So we did not survey the entire parcel. We really focused on the point itself to provide ourselves with enough information to carry the project forward. So real quick, just running through a few photos here. So we visited the site a number of times to become familiar with it. We're seeing obviously the great draw of the site, the reason why it's such a popular site for the public, for the residents of Madison. It's a beautiful area. The views are pretty much unparalleled, I would say, for a large portion of Long Island Sound. But there's also things that we have to deal with in terms of the age of the wall, the use that the lawn is getting. As you can see, some of the areas getting more and more sand over lawn, actually. The age of some of the materials out there in terms of some of the benches, and just overall the safety of the space itself. So we'll work through everything from the structural engineering of the wall up to site amenities such as relocating or replacing benches on the site. We'll also look into the grading of the lawn and the pitch of it, try to keep any water that hits that in terms of rain moving off of it, drying it out quickly so it gets use immediately or soon after storms. But from these few slides here, you can see there are some serious instances of failure at the wall's cap, which is a wooden cap. The wall itself, which Keith will get into a little more detail, has a number of issues with it. So at the real root of this project is the replacement of this wall so that you have a safe and stable point. To layer in on top of that, Sam and I have been working with Keyshore and his team, and Austin and John and the first Selectwoman to show a few options in terms of what can be done to not only enhance the stability of the wall, but potentially lower maintenance, increase safety, and as well as increase the draw and the kind of use of the space. So I'm going to turn it over to Sam to walk through. We still had the goals of the project. So real quick, as I stated, we're looking to just preserve and enhance the point. We're not trying to come in to do any wholesale changes that really affect the use of the space. We understand how popular it is in terms of on a daily basis, but also event times. So we're really just focused in on the structural stability and protection of the point, preserving and enhancing the views that the point provides to users. A really important goal was looking into reducing maintenance. So where we're having scouring and issues with the wall, really basically negating those for the next 30 or 40 years. And then, as I said, embracing the people and the point's natural appeal and seeing what we can do to hit all those points above and also make the point even more attractive for the next 30, 40, 50 years. So now with that, I'll turn it over to Sam.
So previously we have met with the town to discuss some of our concepts, and we ended up narrowing those down to a 1A and a 1B concept, which I'll walk through for you guys tonight. So this is just the existing conditions aerial again, just to orient you to the first concept. So this one is a bit more zoomed out just to show you that we are maintaining the majority of the open lawn here. So this is where you have your picnic tables, the memorial benches, and the grills. We did calculations, and this design will only impact about 16% of the overall point. This is going to be the existing wall, which we'll have at 10.7. And just behind that, we'll have at 9.1 grade would be the decking, which would also act as a stabilization technique. Since Mike was mentioning the scouring there, that would actually help kind of armor that side of the wall. Also, the decking would act as a visual barrier. So right now there's just lawn, so you're walking up to the point and you could actually trip and fall over without kind of seeing that change there. But with the different material, that actually would kind of gauge the user to kind of look down and see that a different environment's coming up. And then also with the different grade change here, that would act as a slight curb and a physical barrier for that drop as well. Also right now, the existing boulder revetment stones are a bit small, so we want to make those larger and also make them higher, because some of the fall heights are actually quite high existing right now. But we want to get that up closer to about 24 inches. So that would make that much safer. And then also lastly, for this one area here, we figure that this would be a great area to watch the sunset. So we would potentially propose relocating the memorial benches along this deck here or replacing them with new ones. And so just to zoom in here, following the deck would start ramping up at 4%. You get to the level 10.7, which is going to be the SLR 2050 elevation. And so this would actually be flush right here with the edge of the proposed wall. This deck would be about 25 feet wide, and it would be surrounded by a seat wall. So this is for people that maybe didn't bring chairs and would like a place to sit along the water. And then just behind that is going to be native coastal grass mounds, which we would try to keep at about 2 or 3 feet to maintain views. And then up here, we would have a terrace seating area. So here would both be the function of another gathering space, but also provide direct beach access and water access, and also have an additional area for large sitting boulders and different aquatic vegetation. So just to get into more detail, we created some sections just to show the different conditions here. So the first one would be through the ramp. So as you can see, if you are sitting right on the lawn at the existing 9.1, it would be a bit more of an intimate experience, as you would be kind of at the same level of the proposed coastal grasses. But if you are standing or sitting at the proposed seat wall or even at the existing picnic benches, the views would be maintained as the grasses would be lower species. And then also you can imagine this would be a great area to kind of walk back and forth, take in the views, sit down. And then this would also show that condition of that slight curb there too, that would act as a safety barrier. And as mentioned, we would be stacking up the boulder revetment a bit higher to make that fall height a lot shorter to about 2 feet. So if someone did choose to be adventurous and go down, it would be a lot safer than it is now. And also on the right-hand side of all the sections, we are showing all the different current elevations for the water, just so you can see how that interacts with the design.
Sam, the couple that you're showing in the corner to the upper left.
Yep.
Can they see the water from there?
So since they're sitting right on the ground, you wouldn't, but if you're sitting on a picnic table or a chair, you would. So they're just kind of, so they would be sitting just kind of right here, but if you were sitting here, you would still see the water.
Okay. But today there's no really blockage to the water. So I guess I'm just pointing out that might be mildly controversial. So I'm just throwing out a
Yeah, so the thought
thought.
behind the grasses is just kind of to add a bit of softness to kind of this hardscape here and kind of bring more of the natural environment to this. But we do have a second concept that would not have this, which I can explain after. So the second section is through the overlook deck. So as you can see here, it's a similar condition with the seat wall. And then you have the 25-foot wide deck here, which can house some smaller events. So maybe bird watching groups or family photos. You could sit here to watch the fireworks. And then this shows the flush condition here where you can actually sit right on that edge. And we did have some
Board of Selectmen photo there, I think.
And we did have some discussions with the town on what it would be like to have a safety railing here. But there are some concerns that we'd like to kind of bring up, which would be maintenance. So for storms and salt spray, that would create, kind of more cost with that upkeep and maintenance. And then also it would impact views quite a bit. So a 42-inch rail, if you're sitting down, would block the views, kind of across the whole point. And then this third section shows the existing lawn, which would be graded up to the 10.7 to create another flush condition here, to this terrace seating area, which would start stepping down at about 1.5 feet each one. And then each landing would be at a different size. So you could either lay down on some, sit with a larger group, maybe a school could come here and have some educational classes. You could sit on some of the sitting boulders and watch your kids play in the shallow water. But then also it still would provide that beach access here, which right now is quite a jump from the existing wall. And then we also had the idea of potentially providing educational markings along the terraces. So visitors who are coming can see, if the water is at high tide or low tide or where it is, depending on the elevation. And then the second concept is the same, except instead of the coastal grasses, this would just be lawn mounds. So those actually would act as a secondary location to sit on top of, and also would not impact the views. As you can see kind of from this precedent image, it would only be about a couple feet. So you would be able to see over those, but then children can, run up and play on them, roll down and whatnot. And some other precedent images are these bench toppers, which we could place along the seat wall, which would provide a bit more of a comfortable seating opportunity. Also, the material is a bit more warm, and it would be nice to kind of sit back and relax on those for people who didn't bring chairs. And then lastly is a precedent in Brooklyn Bridge Park, which is very similar terrace seating opportunity here with the lawn, and then also the access down to the beach, except ours would be a bit smaller, and then also no trees to not impede the view. So I'll turn it over to Kishore.
Thanks. Thanks, Sam. Just want to kind of go over the existing. I know we went over the proposed plans, but I kind of want to just go over what we have on the site right now. So the existing sheet piling wall, the bulkhead is approximately about 280 linear feet. So that's what's in poor shape right now. The top 5 feet is delaminated. We got some cracks in it. We have, from the salt spray and everything, just because the old existing bulkhead was never epoxy coated or anything, and they didn't account for the additional thickness on that. So we're obviously, it needs replacement. So by Army Corps, we can actually, the new proposed, we can go out in front of the existing bulkhead by 18 inches to 2 feet. So that's what we're going to do, so that you're going to gain a little bit of space. And what we'll do is we'll leave this in place for water handling while they're building this. So you're going to save money on water handling by doing the same sheet pile wall. But obviously the new sheet pile wall be epoxy coated and stuff like that. So you'll have a lifespan of, typically it's about a 75-year lifespan for that wall. There is a portion of the wall that was built later that's out of concrete. So that does get undermined. So we are going to try to get to a location where we can kind of stop that wall if the budget allows. It's just past these staircases over here, but it's shallow, and it did get undermined this year also. And if you've seen some of the photos, that you can see some of the sinkholes behind the walls. And that's why one of the options is we are going to, what we show with the walk in the back, we are going to put a concrete walk kind of underneath, but then we're going to face it with the exotic timber on it. So that'll act as more of a safety and a structural component to the wall, actually. You can move on. And as you can see on the top left-hand corner, the existing sheeting, you can see the delamination of the sheets and everything like that. And that's where it transitions from concrete to, from sheet pile to concrete right there. And we kind of got to go around the corner. The borings were actually performed here already. 3 borings were done. Actually, the material is actually pretty good for shoreline area. We do hit bedrock between 21 feet and 32 feet. So we do have good material. Like you can see, we'll come out in front of this by 18 to 2 feet. And what we'll do is the contractor will cut a portion like 2 to 3 feet away so he can grade back in it, and you won't see that sheeting again. So these are kind of the quick concepts, that we were showing in color, but these are more structural drawings. So you can see right here. So the existing sheet pile wall is similar like this with little tiebacks right here. What we're going to do is we're going to come back in front of it like this, like I mentioned, and then the existing one is going to stay in the back, and we're going to have new tiebacks that go from the reverse side. And this is just going to add some additional structural stability to the wall. As you know, that this does overtop in flood zones and stuff like that. We are going to extend the height of the bulkhead from its existing is 9.1, but we are going to extend it to 10.7, which is the 2050 escalation mark. So this is actually going to help us in stabilizing the back of it also. Just, when it resides, when you get flooded, it's still going to reside properly, and you're not going to have those maintenance issues that you have right now. Let's move forward. And as Mike mentioned, the permitting is the biggest, timeline in here. I'll go through the timeline in a bit, but we're going to have, these permits probably most dredging and fill, the 401 water quality certification, Connecticut Deep, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and then we're probably going to have to go local for planning and zoning and inland and wetlands permits. So this process is most likely going to take, because of the Army Corps has kind of really slowed down lately. And by the time we get all these permits, it's probably going to be about a 6-month process once we produce the 60% plans and permit plans. Move forward. So right now we're almost end of July pretty much, and we'll probably need once we get a concurrence on which option we want to go with, and they're pretty similar in option, but long as you guys kind of agree that this is the way we want to move forward, we'll probably take mid-September to get to our 60% plans, and then we'll have some internal reviews by the town, just make sure everything is order. And by end of September, we should be able to submit to the Army Corps, and extending that to about a 6-month schedule. We're looking at end of March. That's when we would get our permits back. And once we get our permits back, we would finalize the design, and mid-May we'd probably have the final plans, and early June we would bid it. But obviously we don't want to build it during the summer because that's when people want to use the area. So the earliest we'd be able to construct this would be next year in September, and then finish by mid-December so you can use it in 2025. And for now, I think budget, it just depends on what we're going to do, but we're going to, the town has a grant for about a total of $1.5 million to do this project. So we're going to try to, we're going to keep it within that budget. We haven't really detailed out an estimate yet, just because we will kind of want to figure out what the scope, how far you want to go with the scope that we just showed you today. And that's all I have for now. Questions?
Is there, sorry, I'm gonna,
Sure.
Is there one option, first or second, that you showed that would lead to sort of a safer option for the community? I mean, I think, as I think about it, with some of the challenges we've had over the last 10 years or so.
Yeah.
With accidents of swimmers and things like that, and people falling onto the rocks. Like, is there one that you guys tend to lean towards that is deemed as safer? Because I think that's where my head goes.
Yeah, Sam, can you go back to the options?
I do love the overlook deck. I'm just going to say that out loud.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I'll just jump in. So yeah. I think overall, since the two are really the only change was removal of the coastal grasses at the backside of the seawall. In terms of safety, they're basically the same, I would say. So we wrestled a little bit, as Sam mentioned, with what a railing could do in terms of safety, and I think that would be the only other real consideration for the point. But seeing what the height of the railing would need to be, and the fact that when you're sitting on a picnic bench or one of the other benches, or even a chair that you've brought, your eye height is going to be almost the exact same level as that railing. It's really going to change the view shed off of the point. So we felt, looking into something where you have a change in material that's a visual cue as you are approaching the edge of the point, and then also building up the stone revetment at the base of the wall, that's going to allow you two different things that you don't have currently to make it a more safe experience there.
Yeah, and Sam, if you go back to one of the other photos, you can see what the fall height is on, not only that one, but there's another photo. Yeah, I think see, like over here, you have a fall height that's pretty high. It's like 6 feet, and it's the same thing on the outer point of it and on the other side too. And so that's what we're talking about, just putting more boulders along here and stuff like that, so that you can naturally walk down if somebody wants to, rather than falling off.
And the stone size.
I remember when we did this, we asked, like, do people put railings, and this is considered a natural scape, right?
Yeah. So anything along the water, it doesn't actually require a railing, but it just depends on the community and where you are. Some people, some towns prefer to have something like that just because it's safer. But like you say, over here, you're going to lose all the views over here. And I think you might have a big, everybody's going to probably have an uproar about that too. So it just depends on what you guys want to do.
And can I ask, are there any maintenance considerations with the natural grasses versus the grassy mounds that you showed in one picture, just in terms of like our grounds crews for maintaining those?
Mike?
So, there's going to be a little more work with, I would say, either one of those because of the fact that, well, it depends on how we grade the mounds if they're lawn. If we grade them at a 3-to-1 slope or less, you can do a riding or a push mower on that very easily. If it's the coastal grasses, you're going to have at times weeds that get in there and grow that are going to have to get pulled. Mm-hmm. So again, I think they're pretty similar. They're not going to add a whole lot of time to the grounds crew if they're going through and mowing the lawn, and they need to use a weed whacker on the mounds versus a push mower or something. It shouldn't be adding a tremendous amount. These aren't large spaces. We had the overlook deck a little bit bigger, and talking with the town staff, we started to pull that back a little bit. So we tried to be pretty tight with this as much as we thought it should be, to your point, to really not add a lot of maintenance. And the grasses themselves, they could be cut down once a year, right, in the winter, and then just let them resprout in the spring.
Yep. Okay, great. Thank you.
And I have two issues. One, I'd love to see the slide deck. I hope you'll be sharing it with us so we can study it at our leisure.
Sure.
Sure.
Secondly, I wanted to follow up on Jen's question. What kind of chemical treatments, if any, would any of these grassy areas or coastal grasses require? We have many people in our community who would, of course, prefer to see absolutely no chemicals in an area like this.
Yeah, these would need no additional chemicals. Once the plants are established, they would just really need watering on a regular basis, depending again on the size of the plant that goes in, whether we do a gallon versus a plug. But really, they just need some water to get established, and they're self kind of regulating because they would be native. We wouldn't be bringing in anything that's needs a fertilizer or needs insecticides or herbicides.
You guys changing the flagpole? I saw it in original pictures, but I'm not seeing in your renderings. So is that out there somewhere?
It's still there, but we haven't.
The schmutz on the screen. All right, got it.
Got it. We haven't touched it yet. It just depends on what you guys want to do with that too. After, if you want to change it, the location, or put a new one in, we can take a look at that. But I think we could
beautify it a little bit.
Yeah,
that would be nice, right?
Yeah, I think what we're trying to propose is the layout for the exterior first, just so that we're all in agreement with that, so we can move forward with the 60% and get the permits going.
Yeah.
Are we voting on anything tonight, Peggy, or no?
No, I think they, it would be eventually, they would go out and start the process, right, for this. I know we had talked, when we originally talked about this last year, we thought we would be actually under construction, this fall. And I think some of the permitting you were saying was more extensive than we thought. We were hoping we were going to be maybe construction in the spring, pushed it again, and then it would be done for next summer. But it sounds like the permitting delays are pretty significant. So we're going to be backed up a year, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I think, the earliest you could do it is probably in early, January or February. But the problem you run into is if there is delays, and then, the summer months come, and, you're going to have public, yelling at you guys saying, well, what's going on here, and how, we can't use it during the summer. So I think the safest bet is next year.
Okay. And then I think that if there doesn't seem to be anything highly objectionable here, I think it looks beautiful. Personally, I like the deck. And we had actually asked them to extend the deck around a little bit more so you could watch the
That's a good
sunset,
idea.
on the other part of the point. And I love the terrace. I think that's going to be an amazing, just knowing with having kids, and shouting at them down on the beach and being able to just walk down the terraces to chase them is going to be a positive for a lot of families. I will say that when we bid this out, as we've been learning, costs have been an issue in terms of escalation and everything else. Are there things in here that could be, broken out differently so that, as a alternate,
Yeah, definitely can.
whether it's the terrace seating or the deck or whatever, so that if we were,
Yep.
hopefully we'll be in
So,
good shape, but
yeah.
I would just say we want to be able to still move forward with the project, and we might have
Correct.
to peel it back a little bit, right?
Yeah. And like Mike mentioned, our primary goal here is the structural stability of the point, obviously. So, I mean, the wall is the most important, but the other stuff can be add-ons, that's all it is. It's not a big deal if we do the overlook that could be an add-on if the overall wall is expensive, right? We can always do this in the future too, if it does become an issue, but you'll have the plans. So,
Right. Okay.
yeah. All right.
Okay, so I guess then the board seems to be okay with the design. We're having a public discussion, so just, don't anybody be surprised when this is kind of how the project looks. Okay, with that, well, thank you guys for your time, and then we'll move on.
All right.
All
Thank
right.
you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks for your
Thank
help, guys.
All right.
Yeah.
See you.
Thanks.
Bye.
I know, I hope that, I think it'll be amazing. It just ends up, getting the way it's designed. I think it's gonna be a
Yeah.
really beautiful asset to the community. So, so we'll see how it goes. So moving on, then we'll go on to item number 10, which is discuss and take action to approve the application of a 2023 Small Town Economic Assistance Program steep grant for the town campus gymnasium flooring.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, great. So you got this in your packet. We're just applying for the grant. We're not accepting the grant. We were very successful last year with the Madison Center project, getting additional funds through a steep grant. This year, we decided to focus on what we think is an immediate surprise. I know we chatted about this a little bit in the town gym. There's been some bubbling in the flooring, and now we're being told that the whole floor has to be redone, including remediation work. So it's ratcheted up the cost to be quite a substantial project. So Austin is in the process of pulling together. The application isn't due until April 19th, right? But or August, August 19th, right?
August 18th, yeah.
18th. So, but it helps us to put the resolution of support in the packet. So that's why I thought if we could vote now that we're good applying. And then, we'll put a full packet together with the costs, and then we'll move it forward through the process from there. Any questions for Austin on this?
No.
Awesome.
No? All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, great. All right, great. Thanks, Austin. Item number 11, discuss and take possible action to approve selected revisions to the town personnel policy. So I want to invite up our HR manager, Deb Ferrante, who I mentioned that we are going to start working through the personnel policies, and we kind of sent forward a chunk of these. I know it's late. I don't know if you're going to be ready to actually firm up. A lot of this is pretty more cleaning up and they're very old, and I'll let Deb highlight some of the changes that are being recommended here. We just took some of the sections. We're working on other sections. And because this has not been done in a long time and there's a lot in there, we thought we'd do it in chunks. So
anyway,
Yep.
hello, everybody.
Hey.
The personnel manual has not been updated in many years, so we have started going through it section by section. It's quite an undertaking, so we've tried to look at it in groups and start with a process. So that's what we've been doing. We've taken quite a few sections. We've updated it for the correct language that we need to. We've done things according to the federal guidelines. So that is a lot of the updating on the language. We've also included different information, especially when we were talking about phones. We included cell phones. When we're talking about driving, it's not only the town vehicles, but if you're driving to a conference or something like that, you're subject to the municipal driving records for the town. So we've included a lot of that language, and what we think we've done is made it more inclusive.
And some of this is just, updating, with, federal, whatever, like, some of the ADA disclosure, discrimination policies, things like that. So I don't know how you want to handle this. I don't think anybody's up for going through this page by page. So you got a kind of markup version. And I don't know if you would rather just, if you get a chance to read it, maybe shoot some questions to Deborah and myself, and we could respond why we made the changes. And then we could kind of come back at the next meeting and kind of vote on it, or with some suggested recommendations. Would that work?
Yeah.
A lot of this is pretty tightening and things like that, and just cleaning some stuff up. So it's a lot, it's how many pages?
It's 20 pages.
Yeah,
so.
that's in the deck. So if people are good with that, the goal is to read it, get your questions in via email, and then we can come back and vote on it at the next meeting with any amendments. Okay.
I'd love to go line by line right now. Not.
Take it
Okay,
back to my
Bruce,
Board
you're
of Ed
muted.
days.
Exactly.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
I did read it. And as I was reading it, I was wondering what value any of my comments would add to the discussion. I think we've got, an HR professional who is recommending these changes. I see them. I understand what's happening. I'm not sure I could offer an opinion that would further the discussion.
Okay.
So I think what we're really doing here is we're accepting the recommendations of our director of HR and town CEO. I don't think you want to invite us to comment, I think is what I'm saying.
Well, and Bruce, I want to second that. Like at the end of the day, unless there's something super controversial that you guys think we should be paying attention to as a Board of Selectmen, I would tend to defer to your recommendations. I have no reason not to. So I'd be prepared to vote tonight if you guys are ready. So.
Okay. I think that the next couple of rounds, there might be, not that they're controversial, but they're bigger policy things about, benefits and things like that. So that's where we need to have a conversation, because that has budget impact. But this first round is more.
You seem very rote, like very basic kind of stuff.
Yeah. I think that's what it is. So I guess if the board feels that way, I can make a motion to accept the selected revisions to the town personnel policies as recommended by the first selectman and the HR department.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I'll make or second or whatever you need for that. That's
Okay.
fine.
Great. And any further discussion? Anything that was, no?
Thanks for all
Okay.
your hard work.
All right. All right. With that, then all in favor, say aye.
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 Look at that, 5-0.
Okay,
Deb.
great. And then I think we'll bring smaller sections where there needs to be some substantive debate, because it'll get more into our benefits and holidays and just things like that. And also our hiring, not our hiring, but just some other policy issues. So, okay, great. Well, thank you. And then the next two items also, we'll need Deb here to talk with us. So I'll move on to item number 12. Discuss and take action to approve the collective bargaining agreement between the town of Madison and UPSU Building and Grounds effective July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2027, and to authorize the first selectman to sign all necessary contracts and documents.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I think it's a good contract. It's a good contract for our employees. I just want to comment that our building and grounds team do an amazing job taking care of all our beaches and recreation facilities and fields. And so we're excited we were able to come to a good agreement with them. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, all in favor of approving, say aye. Aye. Great. All right, that passes. Item number 13, discuss and take action to approve the modification of the collective bargaining agreement between Police Local 1836 and the Town of Madison for a general wage increase for fiscal year 2024 and 2025, and to authorize the first selectwoman to execute a memorandum of understanding between Police Local 1836 and the Town of Madison.
So moved.
Okay. So this is actually, we had a wage reopener as part of the contract that we signed with them a few years ago. And just want to mention that, that original contract was one where we were trying to align our police department with the market. We were kind of under market. So we made a number of adjustments in that contract. And now this is kind of putting us on a more steady path going forward on wages. And also want to highlight, obviously, we're very proud of our police department. They do a wonderful job protecting our community. So I'm glad we were able to come to this agreement. Any further questions?
So I would just have a comment really about the 12 and 13. I'll roll them in because I think it applies to both. In the past, I think as contract negotiations have begun, we've gotten an executive update in executive session on the discussions, the challenges, and the expected outcomes. And I think if we could do that moving forward, that would be beneficial rather than have the completed document, which I'm sure is a good document. But it would be good if we could just sort of have little check-ins along the way so that we understood how the process was going. And other than that, I'm happy to support both of these agreements.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that I've only been here for the negotiations for the previous police contract, and that was quite a different, and it was a bigger discussion that we needed to have for that. So I recall having that. But so if that was the protocol before on the other agreements as well, we'll certainly do that going forward. Okay. No further questions? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, great. And I just want to also compliment, Deborah's done a great job digging into all this. She's got a great rapport with the unions, and just excited that we were able to move past these. So thank you for your work.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, great. Moving on to item number 14, discuss draft proposed citation ordinance. I'm not sure if is Carrie on tonight, because I know she was scheduled for Monday, but I wasn't sure if we were going to be able to get her for tonight.
She's on. I'm gonna put her up.
Okay, great. And then you had a draft ordinance that she had prepared. I actually did have
Did we get that in our packet?
yeah. That was in the Monday pack, or the Friday packet from Monday.
Good evening.
Hi, Carrie. I'm sorry about Monday night too. I don't know if you were left dangling somewhere for a while. I'm wondering if we had a meeting, because I know it was delayed. So hopefully we'll have to talk about our town meeting when we have a moment. So this was this in the packet?
It's been a very interesting meeting and learning about all of these projects that I didn't know about, especially so yeah, it's been very instructive.
Good. So we have the draft citation ordinance. I just want to double check it. I know I have a copy here that was printed, but was that in the packet? Did people get a chance to read it? I think we were deferring to Carrie's kind of expertise in this area.
Just by way of background, there was some blanks that needed to be filled in. And my understanding is the Board of Selectmen put forth their preferences. And then I also spoke to Peggy. And so really what it boiled down to was some very minor changes from the last version that you looked at, which effectively changed the period of time to appeal. And again, just filled in a few of those blanks that were hanging out there. So
Yeah,
not,
and I will say that that's one of the comments, because I know we had talked about it, but for the hearing officer, I think typically the Board of Selectmen would be the appointing authority. You'd had first selectman in here.
so
Um,
want to change that to Board of Selectmen?
yeah, that was the only changes I was recommending, because I know I was supposed to look at it and get back to you with those thoughts, and I don't think you and I connected before the meeting, so.
Well, my
I
only
would
comment on
change.
my only comment on that, Peggy,
Yeah,
is that if somebody appeals a citation, you need to move rather quickly. And what I had suggested and recommended is that you have a panel of potential hearing officers that are appointed by the Board of Selectmen, sort of like a list. And then the first select person, when the appeal came in.
oh, that's what I missed on this. I see what you're saying, because I read this as that I pick the list.
No, what I'm
Okay, I missed that. Yeah.
what I'm recommending is that the Board of Selectmen, just as they would appoint any other committee, a list of maybe 3 hearing officers. And then if an appeal comes in, then it would be up to the first select person to look at the list and pick the appropriate person to hear that particular matter.
Okay. Okay, I misunderstood this. I thought when I read this, it seemed to say that where does it say in here? And maybe I just missed this, and I did not read it. I read it like last week. Where does it say that the Board of Selectmen picks the list of hearing officers? Because I just see the first selectman shall appoint 1 or more citation hearing officers other than police officers.
Right, and again, so
Yeah.
it's really up to all of you as to how you choose to do it. If you want to add a sentence in there that says the Board of Selectmen shall appoint on a, I don't know, biannual basis or whatever you choose, a list of hearing officers, and then
Yeah.
it was part of our discussion, but again, I never heard back on the last draft, so I wasn't.
No, I know. That's my fault, because I had these notes down and then we just didn't get a chance to connect before the Monday meeting. So, I mean, that's my suggestion. I think the board should pick the list, just like we did with the moderators. We appointed a list of moderators, and then the town clerk pulls one from the list. And then, so I think we would have it operated just the same way. The Board of Selectmen would appoint a list, and then I would have to pick depending on what the situation was, right? For the,
and if there was a conflict or something.
Right, exactly. So I think if that could get clarified in this language, then, yeah, and then circle back, and then we could just then send it to public hearing. So we could table the item number 15. And that was my bad, Carrie, because I know I was due to give you specifics, and I had it all written down, but I didn't actually get it to you. So
okay, I know you've been very busy. You all have been very busy. Madison is like, oh my gosh, you got a lot on your plate.
So was there anything else that other board members would want her to amend in this? And then we'll just go, the next draft will then get sent to public hearing. No?
I will say that the statute is, the appeal period is 10 days. And in talking to Peggy, we felt that giving people a longer opportunity to appeal. There was a discussion of 30 days, which I felt was too long. So we compromised at 20. So that's something that we probably had not discussed with this board prior to. But other than that, most of it is not substantive.
Okay. All right, we'll do that. And if you can make those amendments.
Yep.
And then we'll just come back and then send it to public hearing at their August meeting. And then we'll pick a new date, for the public hearing.
Sounds good.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Okay, so I guess then item number 15, hearing no objection, we'll table item number 15 to the next meeting, and then amend the date. Okay. Great. All right, thanks. Next item on the agenda is discuss and take action to approve an application to the fiscal year 24 congressionally directed spending grant for an outreach social worker position in the amount of $113,900.
So
Moved.
Okay.
Second.
A second, great. And this is basically, I think Scott Cochran is here, but this is one of the grants that we went after, the federal grants. And we got notice last month that we got moved to the next step in the process for Academy, which is going to be another like $3.8 million or $3.6 million for Academy. Hopefully, Scott had actually applied for this outreach social worker position. This is the one that was in the budget that the Board of Finance said, let's wait and see grants first rather than funding it through the budget. And lo and behold, he got Scott got notice recently that his got added to the appropriation bill list. So this is just the formal approval of the application itself. And then if we get the grant award, we would vote on that later and understand more what the commitments are. So I don't know if Scott Cochran is on. I don't know if does the board want to hear more about this, or are you good just voting to approve? Okay. All in favor of approving the grant application, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, great. Thanks. And Scott, if you're on, sorry, but I think everybody, it's late and people just want to move on. So discuss and take action to approve a grant application for the community connectivity grant for Scotland Avenue roadway improvements.
Moved.
Second.
And actually this was approved by the Board of Finance, wasn't this? Jacqueline?
Sorry, are we on 17 or 16?
I'm confusing myself here. 17. Because I remember talking about the Board of Finance. Anyway, well, whatever.
I think so.
This is basically to do drainage, roadway improvements, and add sidewalks to Scotland Avenue. And this is a project we've been kind of working on for a while, that we want to do road improvements there. And we decided that this was a great fit for this community connectivity grant, which we've received before, that helped do, I think, the Bradley Road sidewalk project. And I think the one that's coming down from Woodlands is a community connectivity grant, if I recall. So, and that's a, heavily trafficked road, a lot of pedestrians and bikers. There's a town athletic field, there that's heavily used by families. And it's nice because it connects it now to East Wharf, and then the sidewalks leading down to, the library and downtown. So, so I think this is really an exciting opportunity for this. And so any further questions?
As a
Okay,
former
great.
Little
And this
League
is-
president, I think this is amazing and so needed in this area. So
Yeah, I know. This is one we've been watching, and we put this in CIP last year with the hopes of being able to fund a grant. So it's approved by CIP already. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay,
Great.
great. And great job to, the Public Works Department and putting the application together. John and Rob did a great job.
Awesome.
Item number 18, discuss and take action to award a contract between the town of Madison and Atlas Companies for a guide rail replacement project under Connecticut bid with a number in the amount of $83,168.75, and to authorize the first selectman to sign all necessary contracts and documents as budgeted in fiscal year 23-24.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, any discussion or questions about this?
Nope.
Well-needed project.
Mhm.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. Item number 19, discuss and take action to enter into a 5-year capital lease agreement with JP Morgan Chase for the purchase of the approved CIP highway equipment replacement schedule and approved Canon copiers in the amount of $716,167, approved by the Board of Finance on 7/19/23, and to authorize the first selectman to sign all necessary contracts and documents associated with the agreement.
So moved.
Second.
Again.
Okay. Art and his team did a lot of work. I didn't realize you had to have a whole committee to decide about the copiers and the, what needed to be, gotten rid of and upgraded and things like that. But they got to a good place, I think, and got a good rate. So any further questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, great, thanks.
I love a good copier.
Yeah, motion passes. So, item number 20, discuss and take action to award a contract between the town of Madison and Madison Chrysler Inc. for the purchase of a 2022 Chrysler Pacifica hybrid in the amount of $46,578 as approved in the 2023 capital improvement program highway vehicle replacement schedule, and to authorize the first selectman to sign all necessary contracts and documents.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? No? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. And item number 21. Actually, I'd like to, if I hear no objection, to table item number 21. We need some more data. I think I sent out an email that this is something the board may need to revisit. We're having to work on some numbers, and so we're not quite sure what the next steps are going to be on this. So I'd like to table this to the next meeting. Okay. All right, great. Item number 22. Discuss and take action to approve a bid waiver request for the purchase of a 2023 Chevy Tahoe and all related equipment in the amount not to exceed $72,000 as approved in the capital improvement program Nomad apparatus and truck replacement reserve, and to award a contract with the town of Madison and Denoyer Chevrolet, and to authorize the first selectman to sign all necessary contracts and documents.
Moved.
Second.
Okay, any further questions?
So
Sorry,
just,
Peggy. I just have one thing. That was it's a 2022. Remember, we were going to change that. Sorry, that was an error that I made.
Yeah. So I'd like to amend my motion to amend it to be a 2022 Chevrolet Tahoe, not a 2023.
just a process observation. These approvals that we're doing that are all part of the CIP and authorized in the budget, I think are candidates for the consent portion of the agenda.
Complete agreement.
Fine with me.
These are, we've approved
Yeah, I
them through a laborious process, and then they've been further approved by the taxpayers. We're simply
Right.
just executing on the transaction now.
Right.
We don't need to have.
Yeah,
a lot
there's
of
no changes. They're all in budget. And, you know, we're just chasing the vehicle market right now. That's the only thing. So, okay. All right. With that and with my amended motion, can I get a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. All right. Thank you very much, guys. Item number 23 is citizens' comments. Any citizens' hands raised?
No hands are raised.
Anybody hanging in there?
No, we have a few people, but nobody's hands.
Mhm.
All right.
You can
With
always ask us a
that,
question, Jacqueline, if you want.
I'm good, thank you.
well, I guess with that, hearing no objections, this meeting is adjourned.